Procrastination is the thief of time. A wonderful quote and so true by Charles Dickens. Are you guys a procrastinator? Well, if you are, you should be so thrilled about my guest here today on Communication TV. We are kicking off season 3 with someone who can help you with more than just procrastinating. And if you are new to me, welcome. My name is Ellie. I am the host of Communication TV, your communication expert, university professor, author, speaker, course creator, and coach. And today I have an incredible guest for you. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Christine Lee. Dr. Christine Lee is a procrastination coach, psychologist, author, and host of the Make Time for Success podcast. And our heart centered guest uses her time tested strategies to help people achieve success and consistent productivity. And one thing I absolutely love about Christine is that her wish for women is to know that everything they need is already inside of them. And without further delay, I want to welcome to the show Christine.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you so much for welcoming me onto your show and for reconnecting with me a couple months ago. And I'm so happy to meet everyone who is listening today and listening to the replay.
Thank you. And we'll just take a quick moment to say hello, Melanie. Melanie Moore, our wonderful big vision expert here, is the one who introduced us. Oh, she brought us together.
Yes.
So thank you, Melanie, for always bringing the most incredible people into my life. That is my personal thank you, because I am just smitten and adore Christine.
Oh, we all love Melanie. I love Ellie. So thank you. Yes, we're lucky to have a tight-knit, inspiring group of friends to do this online work with. I think it could be an isolating kind of journey, but the fact that Melanie brought us together and is just a connector in this online space from the UK is, I think it's part of what she does, and I think we're connectors each other as well too. I think a bit extroverted and interested in finding out about ourselves and the people that we're with, just making use of this time that we have with each other in fun and exciting ways. So can't wait for our conversation today.
So true. And it's amazing that how with technology, you're on the East Coast, Melanie's in England, I'm here in California. I mean, between the three of us, you're right in the middle.
Yes.
And technology can bring us together so that we can grow and continue to work with each other. And for people that are new to watching Communication TV, the whole point of this show is that being an entrepreneur it can be lonely. And it's hard. They call it the solopreneur. That's hard. It's hard to do things on your own because we're so close to what we do, especially I've run into many introverts in this world, but I'm an extrovert and I need people. it's this is this opportunity to have this show to connect entrepreneurs, especially the incredible entrepreneurs like yourself, Christine, that I've met, to other entrepreneurs or other people out there in the world, so they can know that there are people out there that can help them in areas where they're struggling. And you can share your story and just connect and grow by learning more about each other. But today is really all about you. And I would love for you to share your story. I mean, what brought you into this world? You have a psychology background. Plenty of people out there would be like, I'm a psychologist. I'm good. I'm done. I'm charging hourly. What brought you into this journey?
Thank you for that great prompt, because I think that was a lot of the backstory of how I became procrastination coach from being a psychologist. And I'm still both, but I knew from the beginning of my psychology training that one-on-one psychotherapy was not all that I was meant to do, that I knew it was very gratifying and it was a very effective way of working with people. But from the very beginning, even before I really knew the scope of the field, I knew that I would be interested in community work, in group work, in couples work, in just getting the energy. Again, it's back to the energy that one on one, we have a certain level of energy. And one to many, there's just a very different type of energy. And I, as an extrovert and maybe as a group person, I'm very social. I just felt the online space made a lot of sense to me early on, really early on, before I really knew how to do the tech, which every entrepreneur has to, to brave and learn. Before the tech, I knew there was something that if I could just put the steps together, it would be really a good fit for me. And I think that has come true, that I've really loved even the one-on-one clients who find me from the middle of the Midwest because they need what I offer. It's just this lovely magic that is because of tech and because I put myself out there online, because not every psychologist, of course, does that. Of course, not every psychologist would need to or would want to. But the fact that I made that decision to say, okay, I'm going to learn this whole sphere here, because I feel that the work that I care about, the work about getting people to stop procrastinating and live their lives more fully, can be done very well online. And I've had hundreds of clients online in the past 9+ years, and it's been a joy. And it's actually been, looking back, somewhat simple. It hasn't been complex. That when you put your full voice out, the people who need to hear you are going to find you somehow. I can't explain how it works from a tech standpoint, but I'm grateful that we have these platforms now where we can really search for what we need. And so I'm going to say to anybody who's listening, whether you're a procrastinator or you need help with some other area, know that the web and the people on here, it's just there's an answer for you out there. So take those extra steps, be brave, know that, you could put your name as somebody else's name. You could put a pseudonym on your Zoom handle if you need to. You can try things out. You can shop around, but do get yourself that assistant, get yourself that coach, get yourself that mini course that might break up the resistance or the issues that you're struggling with, so that you can have more fun and do the things that you know you're meant to do. So basically, that's a long ad for just getting out there and using the web, using your resources that are surrounding you at this point. We're really, I think, in a very magical age of entrepreneurship, of technology being able to serve us. We hear a lot about how it takes our time and distracts us, but it's also brought us closer to each other in so many ways and opened up so many possibilities for each one of us.
I love that, Christine. And you said something in there that when you come out and share your full voice, and I there's a lot of people that, yeah. Well, one thing I want to ask is would you define what a full voice is? Because I think there's people out there that think they're they're putting themselves out there, but maybe they're not really using their full voice. How would you describe what that means to you?
What a great question. And I think I have to answer, at least at first, from a very personal standpoint, because as you know, I've just launched my podcast just under 2 weeks ago. And
And how's
talk
that
about
going? I want to ask.
it's going beautifully. I've learned so much, including about how I use my voice and what I need to learn in that category of how I'm using my voice and what room I can expand into with my voice. And one of the shorter stories of that journey is that I hurt my voice in preparing to all the different launch episodes and the interviews and the retakes because I was nervous about how I sounded. And I have learned through my voice coach, Tracy Goodwin, that my voice has been trapped through habit and who knows from what other instances way back when. My voice has been trapped down in my throat. And that really we're supposed to speak from our mouths. And I said to Tracy, who knew? I never knew this. I feel like I've always spoken from my throat. And in that way, I would say, even though I'm podcasting now, even though I've been online for 9 years and a therapist for 20 years, I haven't been really using my full voice. That's the raw voice power. And then, of course, there's the other side, which is the emotional barriers that we have and that we construct and that are sometimes given to us that prevent us from finishing our sentences, from speaking boldly or loudly or confidently. And sometimes we will blank out, or sometimes we will make too big a deal of when we flub our words or forget a name. These are all little magical symptoms. And this is why I love being a psychologist, because our brains are so fantastically sneaky and hilarious in kicking up these voice errors or these flubs just when we most care about how we're sounding or when we really are hoping for the best outcome. And I just, as a therapist, you really spend a lot of time listening to people. But when you learn how to listen to people, you get all the answers. You can see all the patterns. You can see where the person's struggling. And that is where you can help people. That's where the conflict lies. And for me, conflict is just that we have two different opinions about things. I want to be a strong, confident, authoritative speaker. And then the other part of me wants to be safe, wants to not change anything. And when I launch a podcast episode and I make 10 verbal errors, it's me living in that space in between where I don't quite know which side where I want to land on
Yeah.
quite yet. And I'm working to, in all sorts of different ways and over the years, to really land on the side of the confident, authoritative voice and the person who doesn't make vocal flubs so often. But right now, I'm pretty much flubby.
I think that's okay. And even just as a communication person and a speaking professor and coach, uh, anybody who is watching this or catching this is all of our fears. And if I had $1 for every time I've flubbed and I'm a communication expert, I could have retired years ago. You get better by doing and flubbing your way through it and being aware of it and intentional and learning and growing, which is exactly what you do. Now, I it's so interesting because I love that you brought up the psychology part. That's close to my heart. I grew up with a therapist mom, and she's all about the psychology and therapy and patterns. Doesn't mean I came away unscathed from things growing up. I have things that have kept me small and quiet that I've had to work through as well. But I heard something the other day, and I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. And I would just love to hear your thoughts on it because I think this gets so to the point that someone said there is a specific transformational thing that has to occur to take a person from someone standing on the sidelines to moving into the public light, to being seen, heard, and known. Until that transformation, that the person is unwittingly staying hidden because of that biological imperative to stay safe, which is exactly what you said. Like being safe, and you want to be safe, but you want to use your voice and serve at the level that you know you're meant to. But what are your thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts, but one thought was that it's not a single transformation. It's a lot of little, at least for me, it's a lot of micro transformations and a lot of micro moments of bravery where you're just willing to say, I'm going to leave the former self and try the new self that isn't even known yet, the new opportunity, the new volume in my voice, the new eye contact. Those are all moments of bravery and moments of development, I would say, because as with every developmental change, we're much less likely to go backwards once we've firmly arrived at the new level or the new space. And I think the biological imperative is really powerful that we're in some ways constantly thinking about our safety and our intactness or integrity. And that is not only physical, but emotional. And that emotional body is so many years old. It may be many more years old than our physical age because of inheritance and our ancestors and what they had to go through emotionally for us to be alive. And that might be very woo woo, but I do believe there's a lot of history to our energy and our emotional field and how we regulate that. And there are, we would like all to be free and confident and wide open, but there's so many very reasonable reasons why we have to be mindful of that boundary, that there is a boundary and that there are limits to, in some ways, that we have to know ourselves. We have to know our boundaries that way. I'm not being particularly specific, but I think I'm just saying how I feel about these things, and that there is an inheritance, there is that training that we get, and that courage of exploration and experimenting is transformative. So it doesn't really necessarily matter
Mhm.
how we sound or how we feel in the end, although it tends to be great. But it's the fact that we've taken that risk and that we're changing things up. I think for me, again, as the procrastination coach, and with that being my focus, it's the stagnation that really is the corrosive element. It's not just a neutral, it's something that holds us back from all those opportunities that are on the other side. It holds us back from using the time that we're given and that we have. And it holds us back from feeling better about ourselves because typically when we're not experimenting, there's something that we're afraid of. So the fear gets to be the big boss of us, boss of the show. And it's not that vibrancy that happens when Melanie, you and I get together. We're just ready to experiment and know more about each other and try on something new. And it might not be for everyone, but that's the kind of vibe that we'd like to hang out in. That's the one that we want to surround ourselves in. So we each have to find that zone that really lights us up. And it doesn't have to, of course, look like an extroverted vibe at all, but there is that piece of alignment that I think would help our voice to be unencumbered because we're feeling so well. That when we're feeling well, we tend to do well. I think we tend to think more clearly. I think we tend to solve problems with much less stress and angst and all that excess, and we're less weighed down. So it's all of a piece. And I'm just hoping that people who are listening can experiment because of our conversation. That would be a wonderful thing.
It's interesting that you said, so you made me think of something, Christine, is that you mentioned before in the very beginning that you knew the one-on-one thing needed to grow to be working with groups, and you wanted to work with communities, and I think have that sort of group dynamic. Do you think that we can be less stagnant and it's fear less when we do things as a group because we have people around us. And have you seen examples of that in the groups of women you've worked with or the groups of people you worked with?
I absolutely believe that. I do, like I said a couple minutes ago, feel that the energy is just different when you have more than two people in the conversation. I think it's a must. I think it's just by definition, the energy is different. And I've seen that time and time again in groups that are smaller, groups that are larger. I think there's some sort of collective safety that happens that I think the safety, of course, when the group is well led and is safe, that the trust that can be engendered by people participating and saying, we're spending this time together and we're going to deepen this. We're going to deepen this conversation and we're going to try to solve a problem, or we're going to reveal about ourselves. That's something very healing and powerful happens. And I saw it last night. I did a graduation call for my mixed group of people. I call them my success creators in my Success Creators Academy program. And I didn't have any specific plans for the meeting. I was calling it a graduation call. But what it was each person, one by one, describing the lessons that they had learned from each other and from being in the group. And it was just, you can imagine, just so lovely and loving. Like they were exchanging messages of love to each other and with me. And so the answer is very much yes, that I do feel that there is a power in groups, and that if let's say you're listening right now and or watching, and you've been thinking about going into one-on-one therapy, but you've had experiences that have not been so good, or maybe you're done with individual therapy, I would encourage you to find an online group right now, either a Facebook group or a therapy group or a community that's online. There are meetups that are happening still, and maybe they're even more alive now because of the pandemic. So I would encourage you to experiment there. There right now are groups for every component of our lives, I think, right? You're a quilter. You can find your tribe, right? I know there's a woman online who teaches people how to make corsets. Like, this is just something I happen to know. And there's a space for everyone. So if you're feeling isolated now, or if you're feeling like you want to just explore the opportunities in your own space, I would encourage you to reach out and experiment with different programs and groups online too.
Oh, that's such great advice. That is such great advice. Honestly, I think the group thing is fantastic. And here's the, I think here's the issue with going to one-on-one therapy. Finding sometimes the right therapist is like finding the right doctor, dentist, Reiki master, church, what have you. It the first time maybe it's not the right person.
Yeah.
So if you're in a group, there could be someone there that could help you or guide you.
Yes. You can find friends, you can find work partners, you can find creative partners. And with a one-on-one therapy, I think I tend to think even an imperfect match can be perfect. And I think also when you get a perfect match, it can be sublime. That it can be just like you feel like you've hit the jackpot. So um, we can't guarantee these things, but I would say search and know that your comfort level in any relationship, whether it be with your therapist, coach, teacher, partner, needs to feel like it's supporting you. So that's the minimum. That's the bare minimum, is that you feel supported and safe. But then know that you can grow along with that person. You can teach that partner about you so that you feel even safer as you go forward. So I think, again, that's where the power of the voice really is so important, that we need to consistently be showing up for ourselves and representing who we are, no matter what the configuration, individual or group, that we can get lost very easily because there are always going to be more powerful voices. I think you asked at the beginning a little bit of my background. My background was not as a talkative, extroverted person. I was an internally extroverted person who was always fascinated by watching people. But I used to not speak at all. I was very shy. I was very, I would say, anxious about, am I fitting in? Do I know enough to fit in? Can I keep my attention long enough to figure out how to jump into this conversation? All those kinds of anxieties I used to have. I'm not fully clear of everything, but mostly I am, of course, through many years of therapy and coaching and doing this work from the other side of being a therapist. I've learned that my anxiety, whatever anxieties I had, certainly were not serving how I was trying to show up and the things I really wanted to do, which was have more fun, learn many more things, and connect with a lot of people, because I really do love making friends and learning about people, because that's just like, you're not going to learn these things in school. The things you learn most about are from the people you meet after school. So I just wanted to have my full skill set.
When did you, may I ask, when did you realize that you had this sort of anxiety, and what age, around what age were you when you started going to therapy? I'm just curious. And did it inspire you to become a psychologist?
So my story is really backwards because I was a doctoral student in psychology before I really knew what psychology was. And so I am someone who was very lucky to have had lots of different accidental choices that may not be so accidental, but that have all worked out for me. So the choice to be a psychologist without really knowing what psychology was about and not ever having been in therapy prior to landing in a doctoral program was just very lucky. And I'm grateful. I really liked the reading. I really liked reading the material, and it felt easy for me. So I felt like, okay, at least I could handle it academically. But little did I know what the training was really like, because it's all interpersonal, it's all verbal, it's all nonstop. It's, if you're not talking with a therapist, you're talking with 8 of your supervisors. So it's constant, it's a constant dialogue with yourself, because you're constantly reflecting, well, what is going on inside of me? What just happened? How do I explain this to someone? And what is someone trying to explain to me? So it was, in some ways, so wonderful. It was just jumping in the deep end, really, really jumping in the deep end, especially in the hospital wards. But great training for knowing that we all have a voice, we all have a story, we all are, I think I say this often, that we're all the same and we're all incredibly unique. And then if you just kind of rest in that awareness and take that to allow yourself to experiment really broadly and say that I'm okay, even when you're feeling anxious, that then the problems are few and far between, because you're not creating problems for yourself anymore. My history is really with the anxiety and the procrastination. I was causing problems for myself left and right, delaying, not telling people I needed help, not telling people I was going to be late or behind on a paper. It was just rolling anxiety for years. And now I try not to do those kinds of things. I try not to overschedule myself or get myself too far behind. And that means I have a much better work life, a much better time going to bed. I have many more sleep hours that I successfully log in. So life's a lot easier when you tackle these things. And sometimes we need support. And that's why I became a procrastination coach, because it's not rocket science, but it is a damaging syndrome to be caught in procrastination all the time.
I want to come back to that because there's something I want to ask you about what you just shared right now. But I also want to just really quick go back to comment on what you said that you were lucky to go into psychology before you knew what it was. I don't know. I'm almost thinking that your soul knew. You just didn't know it. So you think it's luck, but it's divine. Just putting in my 2 cents.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
just going to say that and I will. Meant to be.
I think it was divine. I think I'm divinely lucky to have found a field that worked for me when I was completely clueless. I felt completely clueless, but perhaps you're right that I wasn't entirely clueless in that entry. I did have to go through a lot of applications and preparation to prepare to enter that program, but there was something that did feel really right about it from the beginning. So, yeah, I would agree with you.
And then coming back, so I want to skip back to where you ended. You mentioned this is the reason you became a procrastination coach. So you will know why. Do you think, and this is just a thought, do you feel that the reason that overscheduling and uh, committing to too many things, I mean, that's a whole book on itself. Do you think that that is, in a sense, a type of procrastination? Like it,
Of
because
of an intentional delay.
yeah, and in this intentional delay, like if I overschedule myself, then there's no chance that then I have an excuse. If I have all this stuff to do, then I have an excuse for not being able to, let's say, exercise because I have all this stuff that I've committed to. I mean, do you think that this is some form of procrastination?
I would certainly be open to that theory as a possibility, and I'm sure it works like that for some. I would say for me, it didn't work like that. For me, the overscheduling was the way I see it is that it was a lack of knowing how to organize, to just the raw skill of how do we organize things. Here are 5 things. How do you organize them? I would just not know how to prioritize and foresee certain things and judge how much time things would take. All of those micro skills, for some reason, were underdeveloped for me and or completely not known. And so things just got jumbled, and I have big eyes. I really want to do all the things. I like participating, I like joining, I like volunteering for things. And so that combination of having few skills in organization and big eyes for doing things was a total mess for many years. But I got to experience a lot of things. I just had to bear a lot of stress. So
I personally, I'm one of those people also. I used to say yes to everything. If there were 3 or 4 birthdays in a day, I would RSVP to all of them, go to all of them, be late, stay an hour, leave. I was a people pleaser. So for me also it had nothing to do with procrastination. It's just that I just didn't want to say no to someone because I didn't want to hurt them or that's my which you're not hurting someone if you say no. Now I have no problem. It's your baby shower. Oh, where are you registered? Okay, I don't do baby showers, but I'm going to send you a gift. That's what I always say. I mean,
I,
I'm terrible. Ever since graduate school, I had so little time. It forced me to start saying no until I got used to it.
just jokingly, I was thinking as you were describing the 3 birthday parties, I would have been, if we were in the same city, I'd be 10 or 15 minutes behind you.
That's why I feel like I know you.
Yes. And I think the desire to not hurt other people's feelings and to show up, these are all beautiful things. I think we sometimes, we can criticize ourselves and say we're people pleasing, but there's something beautiful about that wish. And even that training. I mean, maybe it's not great for us as adults, but there's still it's about connection. It's about showing up. It's about not disappointing people. And I think procrastinators sometimes just come out too often on the side of, I need to show up, I need to be there, I need to do this, neglect myself. And then, of course, that never really works out for anybody. That doesn't work out for the procrastinator or the person they're trying to serve and help and be kind to. So that's the work of coaching and therapy largely, is really to get the person back to centering themselves on themselves, not to turn them into narcissistic, selfish, uncaring people, but to actually expand their capacity to function. That's how I see it, that we get stronger when we're grounded in what we really need and the time constraints that really exist in our daily lives. So it's just calming ourselves down, and then we don't have to run across town all the time. But we miss those days anyway, right? In the pandemic, I mean, if only we could run to three
If
three
only we could go to 3
showers.
public places with lots of people. I mean,
Yes.
how many events did we not attend in 2020? I
Yeah.
mean, in-person events, I should correct that.
Mhm.
But, that's so I love this, Christine. I mean, so okay, so this is a really awesome thing because what got you back into me reaching out to my radar was you published a book last year.
I did.
I'm so excited so would you please, tell our viewers about your book and what
Sure.
inspired it? I know you mentioned something small, but I want you to share the story.
Sure, thank you. I wrote the book. It's called 5-Minute Self-Discipline Exercises. Stay motivated, cultivate good habits, and achieve your goals. And a publishing company reached out to me in March of 2020. So the pandemic had just been maybe a couple weeks old in terms of our actual lives. And I saw it really as a kind of divine timing. That project I did see as divinely timed, because I wasn't going anywhere, and I had the idea of writing a book in my mind for many years. So I thought, let me do some negotiating here, let me do some considering, and then I sat in my chair for 5 weeks and got the book written. It's not the book, it's not a paragraph by paragraph kind of book. It's really a lot of brief exercises. There are 104 exercises that will take 5 minutes or a little bit more to just get the reader to loosen up a bit, or to straighten up a bit about priorities, about what tools do you have, what ideas do you have going, what can be done next. It's that kind of activation oriented kind of book, and I'm very pleased that it got published. I'm pleased I did it. I'm pleased that it's behind me too. There were a lot of emotional moments in writing that, as I think with all books, that you have to come to terms with your own limits, that we all want to put everything in there. We want to put all our soul, our brains, our heart in them, but you can only do so much. And so that's the journey, I think, of every book author, is that we have to call it quits at a certain point, accept that this is what we could do for this project. And I hope it helps the people who have it in their hands and might be planning on getting it.
You don't wanna procrastinate on finishing the book once you've started, right?
Correct, correct. I mean, we can really, it's like working with my PhD candidates. It's really, when we don't have a proper time frame, a proper time limit, that is where the emotional distress really grows. Some of the deepest distress I've seen is when it's kind of like nobody's taking care of you, because nobody's really sticking to any sort of realistic time frame. And that can be very painful, because then the self-criticism and the self-neglect and the loss of opportunities start to flood in, and we really want to try to avoid that when we can.
Yeah. And I think it is something almost like becoming an entrepreneur. It's they say what that's the quickest way in self discovery and learning about yourself and self development is to become an entrepreneur, and so is probably writing a book is another element to that.
Yes, they're definitely personal learning experiences. I would say entrepreneurship is much more the personal development journey because it's so many different elements that we have to teach ourselves and try on that we might not have expected were necessary. I think book writing is pretty standard format, and we know what it will take to get us there, and there's some big emotional hurdles, but you can get there. Entrepreneurships, I think some people must just bail out at the beginning, at the middle, close to the end, just before they're succeeding, because it is constantly calling upon all of your creativity, your confidence, your integrity. It's just tapping on all of these things all the time.
Yeah, that's so true. So now we're talking about some self development here. So you are the procrastination coach. What is the first thing you do, or the first thing you help a group of people with when they're on their journey? Do they have to do the work in the book to start to open up, or is there something specific you do, just the first thing, or the most what you feel is the most important thing to help them?
Oftentimes, I will say, I'll mix this in with the work I do with my psychotherapy clients. Oftentimes, the first thing that needs to happen is just to help the client calm down a little bit, like to reduce the idea of the stress. Because oftentimes the stress is self generated. Maybe they're walking in from a very stressful external event, but I would say more often than not, people are coming in describing their internal generated stress. And so if I can help them just to have a nice conversation without any demands, except you come on time, we end on time, and it's just this little slice of life where we get to focus on you and you don't have to perform. You don't have to be someone. And so it's just getting them to be kind of closer to their original format, their true selves. And I think that's just the model of how therapy is healing, is that we're through words, through communication, through connectedness, returning to the health of the natural self. And the second part of my answer would be what I look for in terms of, did the person listen, and are we connected, is when in the second session or soon after, there's some piece of, oh, I recognize something. Oh, I said no for the first time. Oh, I feel like I've been more mindful about how often I say the word hard because you mentioned it. Whatever it is that they've kind of elevated their level of awareness about how they're acting. So they're not in it, they're more able to observe it from a higher level, figuratively. And I feel like that gives them the space to breathe because they're not knee deep in stress anymore.
I love that. That's and I think when they are knee deep in stress, and I've heard you say this before, that fear has a lot to do with it. And I would never think of procrastination coming from a place of fear, but would you say that's something that you've described and have discovered?
Oh, I think it's absolutely from fear. It's almost
Fear
the
of what?
it's fear of anything, right? We could fear inconvenience. We can fear difficulty. We can fear shame. We can fear messing up. We can fear being late. We can fear being misunderstood. I mean, you can insert any single word, and you could even insert positive words, and people can be afraid of that, right? Fear of praise. There's got to be somebody out there, it's not me, who fears praise. And we can keep going, but it's just how it's the hard wiring and the soft wiring bringing us to adulthood. And there's got to be some fears because we're human. And there's got to be some resistance because we shouldn't want to do all the things, right? We don't have to go to all the baby showers. There's going to be conflict. We love babies. Sometimes we don't love baby showers. So it's okay. And when we see that our fears are just kind of reflections of our thoughts and our conflicts, then we feel safer because we're not reacting to actual danger. We're reacting to a little bit of a map about ourselves and our hearts and what we want to do, right? Sometimes what we want to do is really simple and it's really clear to us, but we're just not listening and we're not looking and we're not remembering and we're not paying attention and we're people pleasing and we're over functioning and we're wiping ourselves out in the process. So there's no energy to really read that roadmap anymore. But the roadmap, that intuition, that, oh, I totally want to do that. I really want to go see Ellie. Like that intuition stuff is just, it's always going to be there for us, even when we're so tired. But we really have to do the work of staying healthy enough, body, mind, and spirit, to pay attention to them so that we don't go too far away from that self.
I love that, Christine. Just exactly like you said, and loving ourselves and making that time for ourselves and going back to that. And I think you talked about organization before, about how this was a huge part of it, not having the tools and the skills that those things are almost impossible to achieve. Those things that we I don't want to say the word should, but should be doing we should be doing for ourselves. That to be organized is a big part of that, and you don't always put these things together, and it's funny because you said something about um, people have this fear of praise. I heard the other day, and I never even thought of this before, and it's true, and I've experienced this myself, is that people get to that limit, and this is why you need to do the work and go to a therapist or whatever it is you need to do the work, or maybe see Melanie and tap on it, is that you have levels that you get to. Like, you'll have no problem accepting praise until it comes from a certain person at a different level, and then all of a sudden you're like this Warner Brothers cartoon. Oh gosh, 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 gosh. You have a hard time accepting it.
Yes. Yes. And that is the value of relying on someone else's energy, borrowing someone's energy because they've already passed that level or because they know you are capable of a higher level. And why not do that? Why not feel freer? It's just one level freer. That's all.
One level, just inch your way up there. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, so you have the podcast, which is fantastic, everyone, by the way. Please tune into the Make Success Happen podcast. I'm going to be a guest in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank
I'm
you
so
so
grateful
much.
for that. But honestly, Christine, you have this smooth, crystal clear voice. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful, and
Thank
you're
you.
easy to listen to. Your guests have been extraordinary, and Melanie's been one of the guests, Melanie Moore. You guys know she's been a guest on Communication TV twice, and we love her.
We
Right,
we love her. Girl crushes.
we're girl
And
crushes. This is like the
yes,
Girl Crush crew.
I'm so happy you're going to be on there as soon as we can arrange it. And I think it's planned already. And I know you're going to be a fantastic guest too. And I can't wait to ask some beautiful questions of you because you've been just a wonderful interviewer. Thank you for really digging deep into these issues and I think helping me to reflect on all the different parts of how I got here to this book and this podcast and this work, and helping me to explain what I really care about. So thank you for doing that.
Welcome. Thank you. I want to honor your time and our guests' time. I could go on for another hour. There should be a part two. But the So there is one question I always ask my guest, Christine, and you know what that is, communication TV. It's, what does communication mean to you, and how do you personally define it?
I think that's such an interesting question because I'm always talking about procrastination, psychology, and I rarely am talking about communication, but I treasure the skill and I value the skill of communication. And for me, it's how we're transmitting information through words and without words. And that's how I'm going to define it. And I think I'm interested in the ways in which we fail to communicate successfully because I think that's where that's where we can I can help people to get more for themselves, get more satisfaction, get more success, get more visibility perhaps, get more recognition, get more of a feeling like, oh, my efforts are landing. Because as you know, the vocal voice is our greatest tool.
Right.
And yeah, and that there's learning we can all do. And it's something that is very doable. It's available to I love tools that are available to everyone and that that are so powerful. And it's our way of connecting with each other. And we forget that. We forget that.
So true. So true. That's beautiful. I love that, how what communication means to you there. And it is a powerful tool. I always say your voice, your message is anchored by your voice. And it, there are things sometimes, even myself, that we work on so that we can get our message out there and really help the people we want to help and serve the people we want to serve, and see them have success. And it, it's so inspired, your podcast, to put this out there, that you're when a person starts a podcast, they're coming out in a big way. And so I put the Make Time for Success podcast at the bottom of the screen. Everyone, make sure you find that, or you're on iTunes. Where else?
Yeah, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all the places you could find a podcast. I believe I'm registered. So thank you for listing it. Again, Make
Oh,
Time for Success. Yep.
and then
And
I've
it's
also listed your website there as well, so people can find you, follow you. Is there anywhere else you'd like to send people, or anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Sure, thank you. I'm very active on Instagram often. The podcast has taken me a little bit away from doing the posting, but I really enjoy doing Instagram stories because they're quick. They are showing my real voice, my real surroundings. And so if you would like to connect with me, please find me at Instagram at Procrastination Coach. And in my bio in Instagram, there are different things listed, including some free resources for you if you happen to be stuck in procrastination and feel like you could use some help.
Yes, go there, and I have her Instagram as well down on the screen. You won't find her under Dr. Christine Lee. She is the procrastination coach on there, and your stories are fantastic. I've loved what you've been sharing, and
Thank you.
I I agree with the stories. It- if I look at my statistics, and you probably will see this, have seen this on yours too, is the percentage of stories compared to the percentage of posts in Instagram for my own account. It's the 90%, 10%.
I know. I think we're really supposed to flip that,
I
but
don't Actually, I don't think so. I feel like you said it is that the look, when you're coming on a story, that is you, that is your real life. Maybe with the filter, maybe not with the filter. It's just usually when you see me in stories, I'm not dressed like this. I'm I'm either just worked out, or I'm in sweats because it's cold. It is what it is. But everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. And Christine, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. You're fantastic, and I really enjoyed the time with you here.
Thank you, Ellie. You've been the best. This has been a lovely interview, a lovely time, and I'm so glad again that we reconnected. So thank you for having me here.
It's so wonderful. Thank you. And guys, make sure you find and follow Christine on social. She's the Procrastination Coach. Look for her podcast on everywhere you can listen to podcasts. Make time for success. And with that, I'm going to wish you all communication for success, health, and happiness. And can't wait to see you all again. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you,
Ciao
guys.
for now.